Welcome to the Psychedelic Couch. Before we dive into today's discussion, we remind our listeners that using illicit drugs carries significant risks and legal consequences. Psychedelic substances like LSD, psilocybin mushrooms, MDMA and DMT are illegal in many countries, including the UK, and their possession or use can lead to legal penalties. Psychedelics can have profound effects on mental and physical health. While some report positive experiences, others may face negative effects like anxiety and psychosis. These substances can also interact unpredictably with medications and underlying conditions. Approach psychedelics with caution and responsibility. This podcast shares information, not encouragement or advocacy for illegal use. If you or someone you know struggles with substance abuse, seek help from healthcare professionals or local support services. In this episode, Tilley discusses the growing interest in psychedelic-assisted therapy for couples. She highlights the medical use of psilocybin, emphasizing its potential to transform relationships by fostering intimacy and connection. Sarah also shares insights from her collaboration with Imperial College on groundbreaking research involving psilocybin and couples therapy. She addresses common misconceptions about psychedelic therapy and underscores the importance of responsible and well-supported therapeutic practices. I hope you enjoy today's episode.
Hi.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
You're straight back from the ICPR conference.
Yeah, it was very good. Very, very good. It's better than last time. I felt very comfortable in that setting amongst Europeans. I really felt like my work was validated. Obviously, I was on a panel with Anne Wagner and then Amory, who work with ketamine in relationships. Anne Wagner is working with MDMA in relationships, and I'm working with psilocybin in relationships. So
she's in Canada, right?
She's in Canada because we're quite far along in developing the program and using it and getting results and fine-tuning the program. And then I got a sense of validation and confidence that what we're doing is working and well regarded as well.
Fantastic. And you say Europeans, is there a difference between other parts of the world that...
Yeah, definitely. In Canada and the US, there's such an emphasis on ketamine. And you really feel that when you're in America. There's so many ketamine clinic owners, practitioners. There's been a lot of investment. There's been a lot of investment and then loss. And, they're still trying to find a profitable model. And, how do you get ketamine to the people? There's that kind of middle person. Can you actually have therapy around it that's affordable and in what way? Yet what we have in the Netherlands is, we have a country where it's legal, and that really became obvious. There was a talk from, I think, the health minister about a new paper that has been published about the steps they're taking in which to bring MDMA into their healthcare system for clinical use. Yet at the same time, there's many practitioners working with psilocybin. So it became much more clear that we're working with legal drugs or decriminalized or illegal drugs. Psilocybin in the Netherlands, people are working with it consistently and really fine-tuning how to work with it. I think also, there was a different model, which is the underground, and I hesitate to say perhaps not enough training, people who are experimenting and charging very low prices. And then we fall into the other category, which we are charging, for the clinician, myself, it's a standard hourly rate, but it really does push our prices up. And we are in that category where people are charging, significant amounts of money in order to go through a program. And that really does reflect on the type of change, transformation and healing that you can have.
One of my questions, which maybe I'll ask later, is if legality wasn't an issue, would you still be using psilocybin, or is there another psychedelic that would be your preference?
That's an interesting question because I have had to think about it amongst my team, because it was only last week that MDMA, it became clear the FDA hadn't approved MDMA, and it has all gone back to the drawing board. It's not the FDA, it's the advisory board. We were discussing, would I use MDMA with couples, because it's been so long in the climate for it to be coming, and we know it as a love drug, and we know it increases empathy and touch, sensuality, yet at the same time it's illegal. And we're definitely sticking to psilocybin. It's a plant medicine. My background is in plant medicine. What was very interesting was the feel of the indigenous traditional cultures that were represented at ICPR, that the language that they're using, the focus and values that they have about us coming into respect and reciprocity for the earth, and listening to this and developing this intuition within ourselves to listen to the earth. We don't have that in psychiatry. We don't have that in these compounds that are being developed in biotech. So once again, it validated the work that I'm doing. And when these traditional people were speaking, you could hear a pin drop in a filled auditorium, and everyone wants to know, what language, where does this come from in the body, this sense of knowing and awareness of how we are connected to the earth. And it was wonderful to be around.
Wow. I wish I'd been there. I couldn't, but next time. Maybe we could start by you explaining your background. You touched on it then. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, personally speaking, I've always been involved in just being very connected to the earth. It's my natural inclination. As a child, I would play in nature, and then I was very sympathetic towards animals. And then as I didn't like eating meat, so even as a child, I became a vegetarian. I was an activist for animals as well as a child. And then, I knew I wanted to go into medicine, but I was trained as a musician. So I went into music and I became a professional musician. And I always knew I was going to come back to medicine in some way. And then, so I studied natural medicine, plant medicine, alternative medicine and complementary medicine in a very, very broad context. So that's homeopathy, flower essences, herbs, tinctures, then NLP and hypnosis, and also it was very holistic shamanism. I had a very strong 4-year training in shamanism, and I knew it resonated with me. And I went straight into because I was already working in education at that stage with music and putting on groups, and so I went very naturally into working with groups and working I moved my whole family to southern Spain, actually, so that we could set up a retreat centre.
Oh, wow.
In 2003, and that was very successful. It was unsustainable within the family dynamic, but then I always knew then that I was absolutely my best within the retreat setting and the work that I could do that could reach many. But personally, I'd been going on retreat, working with my own calling to meditation and Buddhism since a teenager. But within the plant medicine setting, we have things like the signature of the plant, how to tune into this energetic resonance that we have with plants. At the same time, in the body of work of alternative and complementary medicine, we have huge, books of we call it alternative psychiatry, of mental health pictures, all the different symptoms that it breaks down. So, with my homeopathic background, I'm looking for causation, direction of cure, the language that the person is using in order to get through the many layers of the case to the root of the problem. And that's definitely how I address things, and it's how I've devised the program as well. And then, of course, I moved into relationships and then have studied online with Esther Perel for about 6 years.
And how long have you been combining the two?
how long have I been combining psychedelics with relationships, family dynamics, mental health, really for about 4 years. But I have to say, it was such a natural transition to move into psychedelics that there was no sense of concern that I couldn't do it. Including dosage, including observation of cure, observation of the case taking, all of this was a very natural move for me.
And for those who might not be familiar with your work, can you just explain a little bit more about how couples and psilocybin sessions work?
It's, I very clearly wanted to move into psilocybin because it untangles the couple. It creates a sense of individuation. And that's why I wanted to work with psilocybin, because it's very much about individualizing and developing your own sense of power. And so I looked at, and I didn't just do this alone, at creating our original program at Beautiful Space, which has 14 modules of relationship wellness. And that is what I take couples and individuals through. And that is, female empowerment, intimacy and sex. Let's talk about sex, the power dynamics in the couple, communication skills, sexual skills, consensual non-monogamy, inner child work, reparenting the inner child, and then childhood story, family of origin, and trauma. So those are just some of the 14 modules of relationship wellness that was devised with myself and other psychoanalysts, sex therapists, and systemic family therapists. And then I went ahead and looked at MAPS protocol for MDMA, and then I took that out and then created a direction, intentional direction through the program in order to my therapeutic outcome would be that they have reset their relationship into relationship 2.0, that they've developed communication skills, they will have envisaged their future relationship, and then had more relationship satisfaction. I'm talking about it in a very broad loose term. It's in great detail. So we have a 12-week program, which is about 24 hours for couples, and in there we have onboarding, screening, preparation, medicine, and integration, all with great detail.
And that's something I was wondering, what do you think are the unique challenges that couples face when you're bringing that additional element of the psilocybin in?
I think challenges is an interesting word. Every couple that comes to me has pretty much tried conventional couples therapy, and it has worked. It might have worked a little bit, or it hasn't worked at all, or it might have worked a lot, but something still hasn't changed. They haven't been able to address what's going on for them. When we're looking at the challenges of working with psilocybin, it's an unknown. It might be an unknown for them. They don't know what's going to happen. We have to go through harm assessment and risk assessment for each person that's involved and what that might look like. So are they taking drugs? Do we need to screen them out? Are they on SSRIs, antidepressants? Are they on anti-anxiety medication? What does their lifestyle look like as it is? In order to optimize a psilocybin experience, you really need to show up for it. That means you need to have a certain level of self-awareness, and you need to have a mindfulness practice. So one of the very early things I introduced to the individuals within the couple setting is a mindfulness practice. For some, they have no idea how to do it and what that might look like, and even how to fit it into their day. So one of the very early things we do is it going to work in morning, midday, or evening? Where are you going to be sitting in your house? What type of mindfulness is going to work for you? Very often early exercises are mindful exercises, either as the couple or the individual, and that might be a first for them. Other challenges for taking psilocybin might be that there is a cutoff between mind and body. For him, it might be, I have feelings, but I don't know what they're called.
Mm.
I react in this certain way, but I don't know what to do with that reaction. And so a very strong part of what I'm working on is identifying what they're feeling and helping them to develop that, so that by the time they come to taking the psilocybin and they're having a psychedelic experience, they can actually interpret what they're seeing, thinking, feeling, doing, and hearing and tasting, and they've developed a language. So that's definitely a challenge for many people, him and her, working with heterosexual couples, is developing a language which I call the language of sensation and somatic recovery. For her, it might be somatic recovery is that she might have had children, she might have had sexual assault, she might have grown up within a trauma setting where there was a lot of emotional abuse. I mean, this happens, it's not gender specific at all. And she's become disassociated from what's going on in her body. She's become disassociated what sex, intimacy, or sensuality might feel like in a safe environment within her body. Yet, when she's taking a psilocybin trip, and it might be 2.5 grams or higher, she's going to feel things in her body. So I will have taken her through breathwork exercises in order to be able to get to that point where things can happen in her body and she can just allow it rather than try and control it. If she tries to control it, she won't be able to trip. And she will spend the time trying to stop feeling nauseous. She will spend the time just holding onto her body, literally physically holding. And actually, I've learned not to let people trip if they haven't got past that stage of being able to do breathing with me. I've developed a breathwork practice, have developed a mindfulness practice, and when I'm working in a couple setting, to have developed intimacy skills already. And importantly, that is so that they can do this emotional release and letting go, which is very physical, and connecting mind and body in the same room as each other.
And I suppose in many ways what you're doing is setting the foundations for the relationship as an ongoing protocol, to have these skills there for them to be able to use.
Yeah, it's a very strong part of what I do, is bringing these exercises in as early as I can, so that by the time they get to integration stage, they're well versed with that. And when they're in the window of relearning, which, depending on the dose and the compound, with psilocybin, it's 2.5 grams or over, it's about 2 weeks window of relearning, which is a continuing state of neuroplasticity, that they can go back to the exercises that they started, but it has much more meaning and significance, and will actually change, the pathways in their brain.
And are you finding that you're needing to repeat the process with couples, I don't know, every 6 months, or is this long-term change, or do you find that the patterning reverts back to how it was, which is often a common position that couples come into therapy with? As you say, they've tried before, things were okay for a while, but they managed to slip back into where they were.
Very good question. These are all great questions, Claire.
Well, I'm thinking about it obviously as a couples therapist, and that the issues that I see that couples bring.
So yes, absolutely. And I do have the wonderful fortune to be able to, with some couples, to go from one program into a next program. Within science, we say, to do 2 trips is really going to take you through quite marked transformation. We say with 1 trip, it's about 10 years of therapy. I call it accelerated therapy. What can we do and achieve with accelerated therapy? We are able to get past adverse experiences that might have occurred, which might, for example, be infidelity, bring them to what we name in the program is the start of a new phase in their relationship. We're able to help them on that path, I call it a track, into the next phase of their relationship, and also to identify what intimacy might look like in the next phase of their relationship.
Mm.
In the course of 3 months, we in setting them on new tracks, we will have talked about sex, power, and money. We will have spoken about their childhood story, what happened to them. We will have started to build the story of what I call their erotic story. How did they learn about intimacy from the role modeling at home? What were their first sensations in their body when they realized that they had sensations, erotic sensations, and this is not connected to sex? What was their first sexual experience, and how does all of that relate to their ongoing relationships? And looking at addressing any lack and deficiencies in all of this. So it's very broad and it's very deep, and all of that happens within preparation to the psychedelic experience. There's a lot of focus and attention. It's quite an intense program. So they're reading books, they're watching podcasts on things like attachment theory, How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan, different formulations of what of relationship construct. They might be looking at female empowerment, reading books such as The Pleasure Gap, and how do I come into my power within the relationship now the children are older? What is my purpose if I'm not full-time nurturer and carer? So we've looked at so much within all of that. Where it comes to doing a second 12-month program, or I work with people for a whole year, for example, who will do their own programs and then come into a couples program. Someone might come into individual therapy because they know they have an addiction to alcohol, for example, or intimacy still isn't working at home. And so people will opt to stay in therapy and really start to address these things. I've got a couple at the moment who came and they were what I would call facing outwards. And in the time that they've done individual programs and a couples program, and he's been in therapy, and now she's coming on retreat, is really, and they didn't have a language for what I call the conscious couple and sacred intimacy before they came. They had no idea how to relate like this. They're now moving to a different side of the country, and she was actually able to do kind of dancing and ceremony with him around the garden, just giving gratitude and thanks to the house and their life up until this stage. And he was really willing.
Yeah.
He felt awkward, but he was really willing.
Yeah. And something I was thinking about as you were talking, so many couples that come to me, it's about wanting something to be fixed and it being fixed and that's it, we're done. And hearing you talk, it feels like it's more about a lifelong journey, right? That maybe they come and see you once a year, or it's just something that they are continually processing because we change, we evolve, the stresses and traumas of life continue. And I'm always curious that people want something fixed, like it's done. Like, I don't know, you go to the gym and you have whatever it is that you're looking to achieve, and somehow you never return. But of course, that's not how we would work in terms of our physical health, right? We continue to put into that bank. And I'm always curious that couples often expect it just to be done.
I do quite emphasize that it's all about changing your lifestyle. I say that from the beginning. And that means changing your language. We're looking at sleep patterns. We're looking at productivity. One of the main things when you untangle the couple and you come into individuation is how happy are you as an individual? When you're not kind of saying, you don't make me happy anymore. And, well, you're an individual. Can you make yourself happy? We're looking at personal purpose. And, if a person hasn't quite got to grips with who they are and how they show up in the world for themselves, and getting to bed on time, having a personal practice, having a good morning routine, eating well, exercising, being in control of your own serotonin rather than, and this is a very big thing is, do you only have sex and you only have a sex life with your partner, or do you have a sex life with yourself? And, how do you bring what you know about your own pleasure to the relationship? So that's what I mean about, coming into personal purpose. and personal happiness.
Rather than the expectation that somehow you need to do it for me, or you need to
Yeah,
be the one
yeah,
that fixes.
yeah. Lifestyle choices, personal lifestyle choices.
So what do you see as some of the key therapeutic benefits of the combination of couples therapy with psilocybin?
Key therapeutic benefits of couples with psilocybin: accelerated therapy. From the therapist's point of view, I always say this, that they're in therapy to begin with, and then we come into ceremony. And it allows us this thing, which is a very big part of the 14 module program, which is ritual and ceremony within the relationship. It is looking your partner in the eyes as you talk with them. It is the act of active listening, and really showing that you're listening and that you're facing frontways when your partner is talking to you. You're not just kind of side on. That you actually, when you light a candle, that, when you're with your partner and you might have a date night and you want to stay in, and you've been preparing for all of this comes into the practice of working with psilocybin. I say that when we come into ceremony, I step out and the medicine steps in and becomes the authority in the situation, and we listen to what the medicine is telling us, because we've trained our bodies now to really listen. And there's a moment just before taking the medicine that they have worked with the truffles, they've broken them down, they've made this tea. I've shown them how to work with the medicine. And there's music playing, and this act of creating the right setting and environment for safe tripping, that there is, with psilocybin, it's an entheogen. It allows us connection with spirituality and divinity. And, bringing that language, people really start to sit up and listen, that we're not just doing this to have kids and keep having sex when we're bored with the sex that we have. And, we're trauma bonded and we just do this thing. What else is there to talk about if we're not doing that thing? You do that to me and I'm annoyed at that. There is this whole thing, which is, let's be quiet and sacred and just breathe and practice and show up. And that's what working with psilocybin allows us to do.
And what are some of the precautions or safety issues that we need to consider, or that you consider?
So it will be the health of each individual. So that might be whether this is a clinical setting and they are very ill, or whether they're here, what we might call subclinical conditions. So they're not diagnosed, but they might be displaying distressed relationships, grey relationships, facing divorce, loss of intimacy, loss of pleasure, loss of relationship satisfaction. They don't touch, they don't regard each other positively. That there is a childhood trauma which is clearly playing out, acting out in the relationship. So just understanding that and screening out high conflict couples, screening out couples who, or rather putting couples who don't really understand the potential, putting them into more of our education program, which is the Intimacy Lab, helping them to develop awareness and understanding before they then come into the therapeutic side of things. And then, so high conflict couples, we have screening, quite a lot of screening forms, and we're looking at, I forget the terminology, but whether there is abuse playing out in the relationship currently. So it might be violence, domestic violence. So we screen out of that as well. And then really harm reduction is, working with levels of anxiety, especially for her, and it can be for him, helping them to understand a sense of mind-body connection and control that they have through breathwork and mindfulness. Risk is also, it's, are they on medication? that would screen them out. I mean, we do say that psilocybin is low risk, but, we are Beautiful Space is a company which, we have very, very, the highest standards, and we want to be regarded like that. So our safety measures, understanding what ethics around all of this, around touch, I will ask couples or individuals, is it okay if I touch you on your hand when you're in the trip? If I touch you on your hand or on your arm, it might mean, do you want to talk with me? And if you do, lift up your eye mask and take out the music, and I'm there for you. We also have adverse experience protocols. So if someone has an adverse experience, which might be a panic attack, it might be recovered trauma within the medicine setting, that I have auxiliary therapists around me who can support me in the handling of that. But also clients might want to go on to conventional therapy afterwards to really be able to handle what came up as well.
And how do you navigate the inevitable differences that the individuals must have within the couple, even on a practical level? And are they tripping together? How do you stop one triggering the other if one can hear their partner very distressed? Just tell us a bit about kind of practicalities.
And that does happen. And I will say to them, it's a very clear part of what I say on the day of the medicine, is that if you hear that your partner is distressed or crying, I want you to know that I'm looking after them. You don't need to go into rescue mode because inevitably the undistressed one will want to go and rescue. And I do have to let them know, if that kind of plays out in the moment, I will remind them, it's okay, I've got this. I haven't had an experience where two people have been distressed at the same time, and I don't think, I can't say, but what can happen in the psychedelic experience is that you can kind of shut down your trip if you want to care for the other. And that's why I'm very clearly say, don't shut down your trip. I'm looking after this person. When you're looking at distressed relationships and the balance and the imbalance within the relationship, the imbalance will show up in, we call it an amplification of the psyche of whatever's going on in the relationship. So generally it is rescuer and the person who is really suffering.
Yeah, and tell us about the importance of the integration afterwards and how that translates into the relationship and the effectiveness of the process.
Yes, very important. And I do say to everyone, everything that we're doing now is in preparation for the integration, and including the medicine day. So there's this movement upwards, which is really focused. It's the dopamine really focused on, doing the right thing, reading the right books, doing the exercises, really building a self-awareness. They have the medicine experience. And I say, the whole program is like shaking a snow globe. So all of the snow is going to come up. And at the peak of the medicine experience, the snow is still swirling around. What happens as the individual and the couple is coming down, that the snow starts to settle. And in integration, you have this fresh layer throughout all of the experience of preparation and medicine. We've been setting intentions. Why are you here? What do you want to get out of it? Have you been thinking about what you might want to get out of it? Each session they come, I will be crystallizing further and further setting the intention. Here we are at Medicine Day. What's your intention? Let's write them down here. Some people can't actually formulate in a nice sentence, so I'll help them formulate the intention. When it comes to integration, one of the first exercises we do in integration 1 is we create the plan forward. We've understood at the end of Medicine Day, we've understood what happened. What did they see? Where did they go? What did they hear, smell, feel? Who came to them? And I've written all of this down in the form of the trip, and I call it creating a story. Coming into integration one, we create the plan, and I ask them, did you get you will have got your intention, but in what way did you get it? And then we draw the story and the language, and then from integration we have made a plan, and integration 2, 3, and 4 is really accountability in what lifestyle, what choices do you need to make, what people do you need to speak to in order to fulfill the intention that you set here.
And presumably there's lots of byproducts as well. So they have their intention, but they start to notice the other things within the relational dynamic that have changed or shifted.
I mean, I'm working with a couple. I mean, this is pretty standard, that she will not change career, but she will find such more meaning and purpose within within the feminine dynamic. She might be earning more money. She might have developed her own business. Nearly every woman that I work with has done this. Created a project at work. So I work with different slices of society, but every woman will have stepped into her power. For him, he will have learned to listen. He will have learned to understand the female story. He may have apologized for infidelities. He may have apologized for really not showing up in the relationship. And, so, further outcomes are more intimacy, more regular sex, finding a language in understanding how to create intimacy. Some couples don't do that at all, and they go straight back to square one. And I literally say to them, why are you not doing what I've told you to do, and that you've paid me to get advice from me? And we created a plan, and they'll say, well, I'm just too busy with work. Or she'll say, oh, I booked my own holiday with my girlfriends, and we haven't had any of those conversations which you told us to have. And very often for women, it is having their own stream of financial independence.
So then that allows you then to start exploring and being curious about the self-sabotage.
Yeah. And there's such a holding onto the identity constructs that they have formulated around, which might be them being a mother. Generally speaking, for women, it's them being a mother, and that they are firmly attached to that because that's doable. Everything else is too disruptive for them, and they really need to be in much longer term deep therapy, and they need to keep on coming into psychedelic assisted therapy. But some women are not able to put themselves first over the family.
So just touching on sex, how do you see that psychedelics can help bring people into a presence during sex?
And when you say presence, what do you mean by that?
So being present in their body, present with each other, really in the moment. My instinct or my belief would be that they are enabling a presence, a stillness individually, and a shared space where the couple can start to experience maybe more of that sacred sex that you mentioned earlier on.
One of my first goals in the first couples session, which is, we have onboarding, screening, case taking, individual case taking, then we have preparation one. There's 2 preparation sessions. Preparation one is the first couples session. And I will always do eye gazing. Some couples have not been able to do eye gazing. They're that far apart and don't have trust. But I'll get them to do eye gazing, I'll get them to synchronize breathing, and I'll get them maybe to, just place their hands in each other. And, showing up to intimacy, what does that look and feel like? What do you actually feel in this point of contact? What else do you feel in your body when you're giving language and feeling and notice to the sensation that's in your hand? So I call it developing the language of sensation. All of this comes from the Wheel of Consent. And then I come through and we continue to do those exercises, and they continue to learn about themselves under this condition. I might come into doing a giving and receiving exercise, which is also from the Wheel of Consent. What do you want me to do to you? How do you want me to do to you? And how do you feel when you're doing? And how do you feel when you are in Betty's language, being done to. And, you know, in there, we start to build an area of safety so that you can ask for what you want and your partner won't feel rejected when they are only giving what you want and nothing more. So a very clear thing that I have set up is how to feel safe, either within communication or physically. And then these exercises will continue, particular conditions that we can really address, problems and conditions we can really address with psilocybin. It's amazing, actually, to be able to work with couples like this rather than just the talking around the relationship problem. And, you know, maybe some therapists do address, what are we doing in long-term relationships?
Yeah.
And I do feel that we can address that with having psychedelic psilocybin in particular, because it gives us a whole new topic of conversation, because it is a sacred medicine and it is part of the earth structure. You know, mycelium is wrapped all around the planet, and it's been there before human beings, and it will be there way after human beings. And, you know, it helps us to understand the nature of our connectedness, not just with the planet, but with each other, which really puts the relationship into perspective. And as long as couples stay long enough within psychedelic, you know, psilocybin-assisted therapy, they get it. They really get it. And they come into a sense of knowing and self-leadership and understanding that there's so much more meaning to their relationship than, you know, butting heads on where do we go on holiday, you're not listening to me, you know, I keep, you know, drinking at 7 a.m, and because you keep rejecting me. It gives them a whole new reason on how to adult and mature into the next phase of their relationship. Generally speaking, there's power struggles, or there are unresolved trauma
patterns,
in the relationship. So psilocybin very clearly gives us a structure on addressing and working through trauma and coming through into peace and vulnerability and empathy and compassion. So those are very clear things. Working with, you know, what are the mechanisms of psilocybin? It is greater pleasure, increased pleasure. And, you know, that can be listening to a piece of music together. It can be finding a purpose on using psychedelics within your relationship. It can be knowing that when the children go and stay with the grandparents, that we can have a night together and we can bring ritual and ceremony into our relationship, because we now have these touch exercises. And we've learned that we can come into arousal sufficiently, which is good enough. We don't need, if I don't feel like I want to have penetrative sex afterwards, you know, after, you know, as an ongoing process of arousal, that's okay. Because what happens with working with psilocybin is emotional release. You know, all this stuff, for him, it is holding responsibility and the idea of I'm supposed to be this kind of man showing up in the world, you know, and I want to do that in my marriage or relationship, but you keep telling me I'm not capable of doing it. And you're disappointed, and I'm disappointing. You know, instead, he goes for nature walks, connects with himself, does mindfulness, might be microdosing, and you know, coming into developing his own emotional language. They can sit at dinner and she can say, how are you? And instead of saying I'm fine, he can talk about his day, and she can listen empathetically, because she understands the boy that grew up in a trauma household or in childhood neglect. And they've been through all of this, and the same for him. He's listened to her story of vulnerability. So one of the mechanisms is developing compassion and empathy, developing greater significance and meaning in the relationship. All of this happens within the relationship.
And as you talk, I just really got the sense of sort of the softening of the edges. As they sit there in conversation, there's just a softness, a leaning into each other, and a consideration of us rather than those very polarized positions.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, are there any particular memorable experiences that you could share with us?
Yeah, and what's interesting about being at ICPR was, and they kind of left this on a note, which was, let's talk about the negative side of this, because it's just as important to learn from all of that. So I was on 2 panels, and there was opportunity to talk about learnings as well. Learnings from this was, to make sure that we are screening out correctly and high conflict couples. There's a very memorable story is how we, like a SWAT team, brought in our adverse experience protocol and really looked after the client and made sure that they were okay and signposted them to wider help within their wider healthcare teams, and that we stayed with the couple and the individual and her, especially because there are children involved, until that happened. So that was a very big learning for us there. But then, more of the, dancing into the sunset, that couple that I told you, who were able to acknowledge gratitude and really gratitude for the many years of family that they'd had in this house that neither of them had enjoyed living in. And how the gratitude and appreciation for having arrived at a place where they could talk about it and then make conscious choices about what kind of environment they wanted to live in. So that was one, a very positive story of a couple who they came as individuals. They didn't know if they wanted to be together. And actually, they chose not to be together, but they're very good friends. So there's been maybe 3 couples that I've worked with that have gone in through to the process of uncoupling, conscious uncoupling. Each one of those cases has done it with grace and with appreciation and gratitude to the other, and it has been done, in a wonderful way. And where it could have gone horribly wrong, with money and children, it has been done with respect. And the children have flourished under those conditions. There's many, many more details that need handling and managing with all of that. I'm just telling the kind of overall story with that.
Absolutely. And kind of continuing from that, are there any common misconceptions that you hear either clients say or the wider community around psychedelic assisted couples work?
Misconceptions, really, that this might be a one-hit wonder, a silver bullet, that they're not going to have to implement the hard work and show up, that they can just, have a great time, take some drugs, and then fall back into old patterns. Other misconceptions might be in the wider family, which is, this isn't safe, you're a hippie, and it's dangerous. And, friends and family, are concerned, but when they see the change and transformation, they will start to say, you look amazing, or the work that you've been doing, I know you were doing something, but it really shows on you now. So there's kind of counterbalances for that.
Now, Sarah, no conversation with you would be complete without talking about this research, the wonderful research you're doing with Imperial College.
Yeah.
I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, it is amazing that I was able to find that collaboration with Tommaso Barber from Imperial College, who's a PhD candidate in the Centre for Psychedelics research at Imperial College. I just saw the work that he was doing, and we developed a relationship, and we decided to do this. So we designed the research with Talia Cornelius and Hannes Kettner. Talia is at Columbia. Hannes he's currently in San Francisco working under Carl Harris. And for myself as a therapist, to be able to be so, I'm just so grateful to be able to have this element of standard of care and protocol by, having to go into ethics, with Imperial College standards. It is, so we're recruiting 20 couples. We're probably about halfway through the recruitment process, so we're still continuing to recruit. It is, our collaboration with Imperial College means that we're providing the psychological support program. So we're investigating psilocybin in couples and relationship well-being with psychological support. We have, questions around intimacy, around connection, around the mystical experience. This is almost an inevitability as well, and brings this the whole new dynamic. And it is, the couples are really enjoying going through the questions. Really, because it gives them even more a reason to, show up for the exercises, to really think and build a narrative and a language around what's going on for them and the change. So, I'm quite clear that, and we're discussing now, how can we change, that research into something which could be ongoing for, our client base.
It's an ongoing program.
Yeah, what that might look like.
And are there any findings out yet, or what are your hunches from his research so far?
Yeah, so I mean, he's gathering the data. We've just had 2 couples so far come out the other end. We're really happy with the results, and it is, it's the world's first of its kind with psilocybin and couples. From my perspective, couples can go through the program that I've created, and they can take psilocybin, have a psychedelic intervention, and that they can get that thing which is the whole motivation and the why of why I did it, which is, really addressing long-term desire and intimacy in long-term relationships in order to keep the family structure together long enough to create safety for children to be raised within a safe and secure environment. Every couple that comes to us is facing a fork in the road. Are we going to separate, or are we going to do something else? And when they look down the track of something else, they really are out of options. So they come to us, and it's giving us the thing which we really set out to do, which is bringing them together. Whether that means they're going to stay together for life, it just means that there is compassion and empathy and continuing in intimacy.
And is there anything unexpected that you found?
Yeah, I would say it's just so lovely to be working in a program where women are becoming empowered within the couple dynamic. And so that means more time for themselves, more equal division of labor and responsibility, more money, better jobs, and a clearer voice on who they want to be within the relationship, because every couple is out of balance here. What they want in the relationship, and and where their boundaries are around that as well.
And what implications might this research have on psychedelic couples therapy? Do you envisage?
I mean, I set up this whole thing because couples therapy really wasn't working, and I was seeing such a big trend. Conventional couples therapy it's all very well going and talking about it, and doing that ego headbutting thing, and trying to get the therapist to validate who's right and who's wrong. And so many couples, they'll sit in the office and they'll go, they favor the other person, we're not coming here anymore. And instead, we're really addressing the power dynamic, and that rests within, when you hold a magnifying glass up to sexual well-being. When you look at the sexual patterns within the relationship, if you look at what's happening there, it's the micro of the big macro. So when we're taking psilocybin, we're taking something which is giving us a mind-body connection. We really start to feel. And all of the preparation is, what are you feeling and what are the words around this? So when you're coming into your psychedelic experience and you're really feeling and it's making me cry and thinking about when my grandmother died, or it's making me really happy. And I've been so overworked and providing for my family, I forgot how to be happy and let go. That, you know, what's coming into balance is something that we didn't even know was missing because it's in the subconscious. And, you know, when we're working with conventional couples therapy, so much of it is in, you know, within our conscious realm. And now here we are dealing with the shadow side and the subconscious of what is actually playing out in the relationship. So I would hope to think it's going to blow it all out of the water. We can move with assurance.
Yeah, and that people can start to see the unseen.
And, you know, looking at all of this and, you know, devising a whole new type of relationship therapy, we have, and this is the conversation and narrative around it, is that there's hope now. Instead of getting married and thinking, how long is this going to last? The story is, what is our higher purpose as a couple? Solid, flourishing couples are at the crux of society. They are community leaders. They are, you know, when the children fly the nest, they are wider community leaders as well. So it starts to bring in, what are we doing much more long term, and what's the purpose here?
Kind of highlighting community and our positions within that, within the wider community. Looking ahead, you know, what do you think? I know we're almost at the beginning of this research, but what's the next step?
I would like to see relationship and couples therapists really look at this, and they are quite fast actually, a scaling up of this, that there's more access to therapists who want to do this work as another tool in their toolkit. You know, we have so many tools in our toolkit, especially if you've been doing it for a long time, because we're following our own passion. We're staying interested in our own therapeutic practice, and we're evolving continually. In my opinion, this is the ultimate evolution as the therapist, to stay interested in your practice, because it's so different every single time. And you really are seeing deep and meaningful and long-term change. And that's so validating for the therapist, to stay interested, to see good work going somewhere. So I do think that is happening. And, you know, that was definitely a result of ICPR, is that had, you know, many therapists in the long queue of people that wanted to speak to the psilocybin person, is, how do I do this? Can you help us? Can you come to our group where we're doing this and start to train us with this? So yeah, getting all of that done, Claire.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's a continuation of that question of, what do you see as the biggest challenge and the biggest obstacle to all of this? And of course, I'm thinking legalities.
Your questions are so good, Claire.
Well, the thing that comes to me is the sort of the legality part. You know, therapists coming to you wanting to know how to do this. If they're UK therapists, they're having to do that underground or illegally. So
I mean, we have, you know, my program is hybrid and it works very well. And, you know, we have a certain amount we can do online. And then, you know, we're so fortunate that the Netherlands, which hosts this medicine legally, is, you know, a train ride away or a 55-minute plane ride away. So, you know, in order to handle all the medicines, come into practice, we can, you know, we're very fortunate like that. You know, there are places around the world. I do work with people online. So, you know, I'll do all of what I do online, and then I will supervise them into finding someone who can sit for them locally. And then I'll come into, I'm doing this this week actually, with a couple that are in Boston. I'll come into the ceremony at the beginning. I'll conduct the ceremony. I'll leave them to trip alone. I will make sure they don't have too high a dose. And then I'll see them for integration 1 the next day. So it's a different kind of training online, but people can do this under their own jurisdictions as well.
That's fascinating. And then finding a facilitator just to sit with them, to trip sit.
And so either that, and some people do have someone who is experienced, who's happy to come in. And it's absolutely beautiful, because there's a whole other third person where there's a new relationship, not just for me to bring into the ceremony, but for them to start thinking, oh my God, I'm so good at this. I love doing this. So there's that. But if they don't have someone, and that does happen, I'll just make sure that the dose isn't too high, and I'll tell them that out of this dose, you'll still be able to have a conversation, but this is what to do with this dose, and that dose might be 1.5 grams, which is very low in my view. But for beginners, it's a dose you can really handle.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, Sarah, it has been so wonderful to have this conversation. I'm just thinking, is there anything that I've not asked that you wish I had?
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to hear from you what you've kind of learned or picked up.
Oh, I've learned so much. My brain's kind of pumping. I think what you just said there is really interesting. This idea that you could work with clients in the States, not actually meet. That feels really powerful, that there is the potential to do this. And I guess I'd never thought that was possible, that needing to be sat with clients. But if there is this fourth person in the room, that they could somehow hold that space, that feels massive.
How is that possible? It really is all in the preparation. People do say to me, I thought I was going to have a horrible trip. I've got all of this trauma. Why do I feel good at this stage? Why haven't I had a horrible trip or a bad trip? And I'll say to them, it's because you've been prepared so well. And, it's knowing exactly where to get in each session and to cut through the chit chat to get to, we need to talk about this in the next 15 minutes, or we need to go here, or what was that breath there, or what was that sharp thing I felt in your heart as you mentioned this. To be able to do that as a skilled therapist in a short amount of time really does mean that my clients are really well prepared.
And are you planning to work with groups? Because I'm thinking in terms of your time doing this one-to-one with couples, there's only one of you.
Yeah.
Will you be looking to do group work with couples?
Yeah. So thank you for asking that. Yes, absolutely. The dates are in the diary. We're planning to do the Bahamas at the end of this year, just so that we can do more couples for our retreat. Yes, very often I'm sitting with a couple and, imparting wisdom, and they're going, oh, yeah, this is great. I'm thinking, oh my God, there should be 10 people in this room hearing this. So it's really important for me to kind of get to that group situation. Finding the right location is so important for me. I've been looking for the right location, I could say, for about 5 years. I've found the right part of the Netherlands now, and I'm just building a team who are based on the ground, who can help us with the doing of all of that. Running retreats is a very big deal, and it's so easy to get it wrong. And if you get it wrong, you've missed an opportunity. So I've been waiting a very long time, and we are starting this year.
Great.
What I do within the psilocybin setting, but then, I also do, we do toning, we do breath work, we do chanting, holding space for each other. What really took off at ICPR was this thing, which is, I work with couples who are facing outwards, they come through into the conscious couple, and then they come together in sacred intimacy. And I'm calling that sex 2.0. And then I was saying, of course, everyone wants to feel like they're having sex. So now we call cuddling sex. And, you get that kind of ripple of laughter from the researchers and the business people. But for those of us who are doing that practice and experiencing, this rise of arousal and the physiological change as well, and what it actually does for the relationship, is really, that is going to change things. And as I was traveling back from ICPR, always when I'm on the move, that's where my greatest thoughts happen. I was thinking where I want to go with this, and I definitely want to move it to sex.
Yeah.
I want to do another research program after this, and it is on sex.
Is the current research at Imperial not including that, or is it just relational?
It's on intimacy. How many times you're having moments of intimacy. But what I would like to do is the brain scanning around all this. Someone told me about this mice study of polyamorous mice or monogamous mice. Which one has the more oxytocin? And it could go either way. And I said polyamory, and he's like, no. The deeper you stick with all of this, monogamous mice have more oxytocin. Have you listened to the book? Let me just see. They've got a very interesting section on sex. Recapture the Rapture. It's a very good book, but they just talk about female orgasm as being more consistent and has greater relief in creating happiness in women. I think, it's like 63% of the women in this study compared to 45% had greater mystical experiences. So that was the definition of the psychedelic experience. So one was on psychedelics, one was orgasming. And the women who were orgasming had more consistency and greater effect of the mystical experience on psilocybin. That was really interesting to hear that if we take that into the couple setting and we bring, kind of evenness there. So I am now talking with the right researchers, but it's a very long conversation and we haven't finished this study yet.
Well, yeah, I can't wait to hear more.
Yeah.
And if people want to hear more, learn more, look at your retreats, where can they find you?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. It is beautifulspace.org is our website. And then I'm on Instagram. We have Beautiful Space Wellness, or I'm Sarah Tilley Wellness on Instagram and LinkedIn as well. I think I'm just Sarah Tilley. I'm much more I'm not very visible on any of it. I just keep my head down and I do the therapy, and then I speak with my business team, and we're doing the best we can. It's time I get on camera. But I just wanted to mention that, I created a couples program and that was brilliant. And then there was a very big realization that you can't have a couples program without having the women's program. And I'd started the women's program, 2 decades ago, and I re-brought it back in. And, how do women feel sensual and sexual and, empowered, and they have an authentic voice within the relationship? Being in the women's program is that place.
And all the information about that is on the website as well, is it?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, Sarah, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Claire.
I look forward to speaking with you again really soon.
Thank you so much, Claire.
You've been listening to the Psychedelic Couch. For more episodes, please follow me on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts, and find me on Instagram at the Psychedelic Couch and at Claire Faulkner Therapy, where I will be keeping you up to date on the latest episodes and information surrounding all things therapy, psychedelics, and expanded states.